Hi, my name is Matthew Bellisario. Thanks for coming back by the BellisarioSonic YouTube channel from the heart of the Deep South on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama, where we talk about music, we talk about records, do record reviews, interviews, and much more. Today, I'm very happy to bring you a wonderful conversation that I had with this fantastic jazz saxophone player from Italy, Cristiano Giardini, who has given us this wonderful record from Bird Box Records out of Italy called Odisseia. Fantastic album. I did a full review of this, and for those of you that missed that full review, I'll put a link below so you can go check that out. It was wonderful to talk to him, and I kind of went back and forth on how to present this interview, because the interview is about an hour and a half, and I was like, well, are a lot of people going to watch a full hour and a half, or should I break this up into a few different parts? So I decided to go ahead and do both. So this Sunday, you're watching this part one, hopefully. And I broke this interview up into three parts. So the first part that you're watching now, hopefully, will be on his background as a musician, his education, his love for jazz, and how he developed into a jazz musician. That's part one. Part two will be on this particular record, the making of this record, how it came together. A very interesting story on how he came to put the record together, especially with the particular musicians on this. Great story there. And then part three, we just sit back and talk about our favorite jazz saxophone players, and we go through vinyl records. Cristiano is a vinyl record collector, and he was nice enough to go through and talk about all these wonderful jazz saxophone players that he has a very in-depth knowledge of. He's very well studied, and you can tell that he has a great love and passion for jazz and for all of these wonderful saxophone players that came before him. So I'm going to put this out in three parts, and then I'm going to later on put out the whole hour and a half interview. I might do that like a week later or so, and let you guys watch the three parts if you want to do that, and then I'll put out the whole extended version, if you will, the whole hour and a half as a complete separate video later on. That way it's out there in both ways, and for those of you guys that like to sit back and just watch the whole thing all the way through, you can do that. And for those of you that want to break it up to a few different topics and watch 30-minute, 20-minute, 40-minute type length videos, then I think that'll be for you guys. So this Sunday, which is hopefully today, you're watching this, but whatever day you're watching it, you'll see that all three parts came out on Sunday at 12, 2, and 5 p.m. So they all kind of follow one another, and then you'll be able to just watch them as you would like to do. And then for those of you that like to sit back and watch the whole thing all together, you'll be able to do that in about a week or so. So I appreciate you guys coming to the channel and supporting all these wonderful musicians that are making great jazz today, and all these independent record labels. We got a lot more stuff coming for you guys. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this wonderful conversation. If you're into jazz, you're really going to enjoy this. Hello, my name is Matthew Bellisario. I have with me a very special guest today, all the way from Italy, Cristiano Giardini. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me for a little bit.
Thanks to you, Maddie, and all the listeners, of course. And it's fantastic to be here with you.
Well, thanks. So a little bit about you. Now, everything I got off the web, I had to get translated from Google. So we'll see how accurate it is. You can fill in all the details. But I see that you were born in Italy, and you started off playing the clarinet, classical clarinet.
Yeah,
And then in 1990 or thereabouts, you started studying saxophone and jazz music. I see that you graduated from the Conservatorio Bellini in Catania in 1992. And then you began also to take private lessons from a lot of very distinguished musicians in Italy, which
yeah,
probably a lot of us here in the United States aren't very familiar with, but hopefully we can change that. In the summer of 97, you entered the Conservatorium van Amsterdam in Holland, where you graduated in jazz studies in 2002. 2005, you won the first prize National Jazz Music Festival in Berenice. 2004 to 2007, you taught jazz saxophone at the Accademia Musicale Siciliana. I hope I'm pronouncing these right. With Giovanni Mazzarino. And in July 2008, you obtained a master's degree in jazz music at the Corelli Conservatory in Messina. And I think you've also taught, you're a professor of jazz saxophone at the Bellini Conservatory in Catania. And your list of achievements are quite long. So, and again, a lot of that was translated from Google. So I hope I'm very accurate. And you've also been very well known in Italy for your collaborations with a lot of jazz musicians. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's a really a pleasure. The thing you said until now is everything is absolutely correct and perfect. I mean, yeah, I started playing music. You get considered. I started when I was 3 years old.
Oh, okay.
My parents gave me like a small keyboards, and I started playing and playing in Italy is it's a double meaning, because we say playing for kids that play with games, and also playing means the same verb. It means also playing music or playing with something. But so if you say they do play with the keyboards, it means that you start have a gaming with the keyboard when you're a kid, But so after my parents started to think maybe this little boy is really into music, so they bought me a bigger keyboard, and then I start to take lessons with the classical piano teacher. And actually, I almost graduated in classical piano, because in Italy we do have kind of three steps: a fifth year, 8 years, and the last is the 10 years piano academy somehow. And I arrived until the 8 years, which is basically the most important. Then I missed the last two, But so my beginning was with the piano, and after I because since the beginning, since I was a kid, I wanted to play saxophone. But at the time, parents, nobody in my family is a musician, so they couldn't believe that this little boy wants to play sax. Nobody knew about saxophone. What is this instrument? Quite strange, and so even as my father was a jazz lover, he was listening jazz. But I mean, your boy that wants to play saxophone when he's 3 years old is quite strange. So first of all, you start with the piano, and I was still asking, I want to play saxophone. So when I was 12, okay, at least you can play clarinet. It's more understandable, because you got to also understand that. I mean, at that time and in our society, you go to the teacher, to a well-known conservatory teacher, and you ask, my son wants to play. No, it's better clarinet than saxophone. Saxophone is kind of evil instrument, so clarinet. I said, okay, I study clarinet. I want to play saxophone, but it's okay. But then, of course, when I was like 17, 16, 17, I bought my first saxophone of my life, a Selmer, beautiful, beautiful Selmer, and I started
Selmer. Oh, wow.
playing.
So that was what, when you were, it's about 17 and you're in your teens when you started playing. And then did the clarinet transfer over to the saxophone very easily as far as how to play it?
Yeah, you gotta say they also consider the many. I believe also in US, in USA, many jazz musician, modern jazz musician, come from clarinet. I I I met many musicians, not even in Italy. Clarinet. I mean, maybe for my generation, I don't know. Maybe now things changed, but at the time, I mean, we're talking about end of 60, beginning of 70s, clarinet was more popular, and even consider the classical technique. Now, of course, saxophone is in each conservatory, and it's easy to apply and to get into a conservatory. There's the saxophone, but at the time there was no saxophone in the conservatory, so we start playing clarinet, and the technique is quite similar. So it was easy then to transfer everything to the saxophone.
Interesting. So, what made you steer towards jazz rather than maybe a classical road? What drew you to jazz music?
I believe that you have to know that I'm not able, for example, to think a solo or an improvisation on a clarinet. It doesn't get into my head. I always found in the saxophone the possibility to fly and to express all the things that I have in my head. It's much easier to me. I don't know why, and it comes really easily. I mean, it's not easy at all. Jazz
Right.
music is quite difficult, but it comes to me much easier on the saxophone that not in every other instrument. And I take the occasion to give you my opinion about it. There are jazz musicians that can play anything. They can express themselves in any kind of instrument. And then there are jazz musicians that can express themselves in one instrument. This is my situation. I'm a saxophone player. I just play. Okay, I can do some recording or some stuff on the clarinet if someone asks, but the saxophone is my instrument.
And then, do you still play piano as well to when you're
Yeah,
composing or arranging? That's still, I would imagine, that comes in very, that's very helpful to have played the piano.
absolutely. All my compositions comes from the piano. I cannot write music without piano. Yeah, absolutely.
So, tell us a little bit about your education, the schools you went to. How did those help you become a better musician?
Well, you gotta consider that the classical conservatorium in Italy now changed totally. But in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they were really strict on their um, the yeah how can you say on the whole trip of the conservatorium. So you had to study really a lot of stuff, and this gives you a great technique in order of really taking classical technique on the wind instrument is unbelievable. I mean, of course, in every other instruments, but when you study all this difficult stuff of classical music, and you stay there hours and hours and hours and hours and 10 years in a row, of course, give you like muscles, and this I'm really glad, I'm thankful for all the things I did on the classical conservatorium. And then, of course, my father was a jazz lover. He was since I was kid listening to the old jazz, Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman and Count Basie and Duke Ellington. So now, when I was in the car with them, this music was always in my ears. Always every day. And at the beginning, I didn't like it because I didn't understand it at all. But it was there. And then once came something that I cannot understand. Still, it's tricky story because I was going. I had to study with a friend of mine. I was 11 years old, so my mother left me close to this guy's house, and I was there. But I don't know why. Before to get into his house, I went to a small newspaper shop that was close to his house. maybe to buy something, a pencil or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember. But there was a pile of newspapers and things, and there was a bunch of CDs, music CDs. And suddenly I saw a blue note, Miles Davis, kind of blue. And I thought, well, kind of blue. Wow, blue. Maybe it's yeah, blues record, like rhythm and blues. I don't know. I had no idea at all. But it sounds nice, kind of blue. And also the cover was nice. So I thought, okay, I buy it. And I bought this record. And it was over, man. It shot me into my head. And
That was it,
from
huh?
that moment on, I decided to be a musician, jazz musician. I
Wow. So
mean,
yeah,
it
that's a
maybe sounds like stupid, but that
well
record really
changed everything.
changed everything. Changed everything. I had no idea what it was. I mean, it was like I thought there was a rhythm and blues record or
Yeah,
something. I
right.
didn't know.
From the title, yeah.
Yeah,
That's funny. So what
and
about
then I
some of these?
started to
You started to really get into everything.
yeah.
And then what are these other musicians that you studied with that were in Italy at the time that you were able to take lessons from? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Some of the other people.
I can tell you, in Sicily, there are a lot of fantastic jazz musicians. A lot. In Sicily and in south of Italy, we in the history of jazz, I think I can say like we gave a lot of this music. Many musicians from south of Italy wrote something. They printed, something on this music. Uh, at that time, I had the chance to study with one of the most incredible saxophone player. His name is Orazio Maugeri, and Matthew, believe me, if you hear playing Orazio still now, I mean, he's a giant. But of
How do you
course,
spell his name? People will be
oh,
interested in that. How do
yeah,
you
absolutely. His name is
Orazio
Orazio Maugeri.
Maugeri? Okay,
Maugeri
cool.
is a teacher in. He teach to many musicians, not only to me, of course. And he's the teacher of the Palermo Conservatorium. He's the
Okay,
first alto in the big band, Palermo's big band. The biggest big band we have in Sicily. And Orazio he played with all the jazz musicians all around the world. I mean, Orazio is really unbelievable. And he's a talent, he's a genius. And he was my first teacher. But at the time, it was too much to me. I mean, I couldn't follow him because he was running really, really fucking fast. I mean, it was unbelievable, and I had no consciousness. I mean, I had no rules to understand this music. I knew that I wanted to study this music and to play this music was too difficult to me. So I had like I did a kind of tour, a kind of trip around Italy. I started from him, then I went to a great guy in Rome. Uh, then I studied in Siena for a year, and there no 2 years, and in that years there were great musicians. There was teaching Enrico Rava, one of the most Italian jazz musicians. But there were many others. There was Enrico Pieranunzi, Paolino Dalla Porta, many Italian great jazz musicians. But that wasn't enough at all. I felt that I needed more, so I went to Paris, and then I went to London,
oh
finally
wow.
I I went to Amsterdam, and there I found my guru, which is Ferdinand Poffel, and Ferdinand is something we cannot talk about. It's too much.
So you're very
Ferdinand has been like the most influenced jazz player in North Europe.
really so.
Everybody, yeah.
So here in the U.S., we're not very familiar with a lot of these players. So what is it? Does they have a lot of CDs and records and things?
Well, Ferdinand is quite very strange musician. He has his own opinion on jazz. For
Okay.
example, uh, of course, he has been playing close to Dexter on Dexter Gordon big bands and Dizzy and mm, thousands of giants American musicians, and all of them knows him. I mean, he's a really giant, and he has been teaching generations of North Europe jazz musicians, even the south of Europe, because many people from Spain, Greece, Italy went there to study with him. And the funny story is that at the time my English, even now, I mean, but at the time my English was really bad, and there was Joe Lovano, which is a musician that has an important uh, part of my life, my music life. I'm really in love with this with Joe, and I think he's one of the most important modern jazz musicians. And but anyway, Joe was here because Joe is Sicilian, so Joe comes here in Sicily many times. He has still relatives and parents, and so I mean he comes here quite often. And it was like 93, I guess. We went to a concert he was playing in Catania. Me and my friend. My friend was able to speak better English than mine. So we went to this hotel room, and my friend said to him, "Hey Joe, I introduce you Cristiano, and this guy is looking for a teacher, a jazz teacher, a player that can give him, something more. Can you suggest something, someone? I mean, to." And Joe said that. So Joe said, "Listen, a trumpet player comes from Holland. I'm in tour with. Gave me this record. It, it was a cassette in which there is a saxophone player that I'm listening and listening in this tour since weeks because I cannot stop listening to him. To me, is one of the five better saxophone players in the world. To me," Joe said. His name is Ferdinand Poffel. So do your best to catch him, to to go to him. So I went to internet and I start looking for this name, Ferdinand Poffel. I didn't know about him, and I found him in Holland, and
And
I
his name
asked him an audition, and I went there studying with him.
and it's Ferdinand Bulford. How do you spell it?
It's Povel,
Bovel. Okay, because I'm going to look it up. At
Ferdinand Povel.
Bulford.
Yeah, it's
Bulful.
Povel.
Bovel. And then
And Ferdinand,
go ahead.
so tell me.
Oh no, I was going to find out. So what was the recording? Is that available to
Yeah,
for
there
purchase?
are a couple of records, but you cannot find a record with his name, because his idea is that, I mean, jazz's history is so full of amazing records that they don't need mine. So he never recorded a
Oh
CD with his
wow.
name. He's always in quintet with other
Oh, it's
people.
oh okay. Well, if after we're done, if you could email me some of the records he's on, I would really appreciate that. If I could,
Absolutely, I will
that
do
would be
it.
great.
Absolutely, I will
Okay.
do it. Of course, I'll do it. It is my pleasure. For example, Ferdinand never wrote a song by himself. He says, I mean, jazz is so full of so beautiful standards. They don't need a song of mine. So, okay, Ferdinand is a character. Is something else. Like Cannibal would say, Ferdinand is something else.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. What were some of the other musicians that you ran into? So you said you went. Did you play in a lot of jam sessions? I'm always curious about that. Like running, a lot of cities have jam sessions, and they'll have musicians come up and play. And were you involved in a lot of those, or?
Where well, if you talk about jam sessions, Holland is unbelievable. Amsterdam is something. At that time, you have to imagine that uh, we found an article of the in a New York newspaper. I don't remember it was the Times or something. Anyway, they was talking about Amsterdam, saying that in that period, I'm talking between 94, 95 till 2005, 2006. Okay. And they were saying that Amsterdam was expressing more art in general, theater, music, whatever, and mostly jazz than in New York. Because at the
Interesting.
time in Amsterdam, you could find all the best musicians in the world. You could play jam session all day, all day. I mean, in Monday there was jams. I own a jam session for 4 years in the Barber Street club for 4 years. But there were jam session all over. You could play with everybody. I mean, I played in sessions with big names, but even with thousands of other musicians that were in tour, in European tour, that you of course didn't know the name at all, but they were unbelievable. So in that period, I mean, Amsterdam was magic, magic. Brazilian music,
Wow.
funk music, pop music, jazz, like well, like more than 100 open theaters, thousands of big bands. So it wasn't really a magic period. So if you talk about jam session, I grew up there playing with people you don't know and that are really fucking ass. I mean,
Uh,
fucking good musicians. And
was
there
there
you
any?
cannot say, okay, I don't know the tune. I mean, you really have to play.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So, were there any people that were intimidating when you first get up, or are there people? Because I go to a jam session here. We have one in Birmingham, and it's a pretty good jam session. But he always tells stories. The guy that runs it now, he's pretty nice. If he'll say something to you after the fact. If you don't know the tune or something, he'll say something to you nicely. He said the people that he came up under, they would throw you off the stage in the middle of the song. He'd go up there
It happens.
and
It
so
happens.
what did you have any interesting experiences with any of those jam sessions?
It is that characteristic of a jam session. It has always these both sides that you are talking about. Uh, Somehow we love music, we want to be musicians, and if we want to be different from other categories, we want to be kind, we want to stay together, we want to share love and good vibes, so one of the characteristics of the jam session is that you are welcome to all the musicians, but in the other side, if you someone sometimes you don't kick out someone, he will never grow up. And this is like really American style, because it happens that many times, like big names. I mean, if you don't know how to play jazz or you pretend to play jazz, then man, fuck off,
Yeah.
And I agree, it's not nice, but it's useful. So there is always like a middle way. I mean, not too much, but not too less. And it happens that sometimes, for example, once I was directing the jam session at Barber Street. I was playing there with the guys, fellows, and suddenly I see something moving on the audience. So I didn't understand what was happening. But actually, I had experience enough to understand that there was a big name over there because people started to move, and I saw a hat like this. Now I tell now you recognize it.
Yeah.
I saw a hat like this, something like this walking on, something like this walking around. And I thought, this is Joe for sure. And it was Joe Lawan on the audience. So he just picked up the horn and he came like slowly on the stage, and suddenly all the musicians went out on the stage. He just he just stayed there alone, close to me, and piano player, drummer, guitar, bass, they went out of the stage, and we just watched the face, man, him. And I said, Joe. And then suddenly, okay, some more experienced musician came in and we start playing. But I mean, are things that happen, it's understandable.
Everybody was in awe and intimidated in some ways, right? Because you don't want to,
I mean,
yeah.
Joy is a quite kind guys, but it can happen that someone else, I mean, can pretend that you know what you are doing, and it's not incorrect. I mean, it's understandable because if when you deal with the jam session, sometimes it happens that comes in a musician. Okay, I want to play. Okay, what do you want to play? Oh, just I want to play. Okay, but what? Oh
Yeah.
no, just playing. Okay, you understand that it's not really no. Uh, he has no level to deal with the other musician. So if you keep the level high, then the music smiles, and everything goes in a better
Right.
way. Let's say.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had a lot of different experiences, I'm sure, playing with a lot of different people. But and
Yeah.
who do you think who were a couple that you played with on stage there that you thought influenced you, or you thought really caught your attention and maybe affected how you played? Some of the musicians that maybe you ran into. I mean, you already
I
mentioned
mean,
Joe.
it's the story. I mean, it happens. I mean, when you can study at home, you can practice, you can do whatever you want. But if you don't eat on the street, it doesn't work. This is a music that has to be done on the street. The cats we love, all the cats we love, from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, they were fighting each other on clubs, and we know that the best records were done after the jam sessions or after in the middle of the night. What I'm saying is that this experience, of course, give to you and yeah, the reason to go on. I mean, you learn so much from the stage and not from your cabin room. I mean, but everybody knows that. I mean, if you stay in your house, I mean, and practicing without playing with people, you don't understand it. You don't.
Right.
But it's not me. I mean, it's not my own. It's the opinion of you know all around world jazz musicians.